Hi, love. Hello, and welcome to Co-Creative Healing Journey. My name is Greta. I'm a healer, and this is a series of videos that are intended for those of you who are on a path of spiritual growth and evolution. And actually, I include myself in that. I love these messages and what Spirit is bringing through. It is really inspiring every single time to be in this energy, to share it, and of course, later on, I do listen to the messages at the right time for me, and so on and so forth. So I'm very excited to have you here to be the reason why I'm putting it out, but also to be able to benefit. So thank you so much. Bless you. And let's look at what Spirit wants to talk about today. We have the Whispers of Lord Ganesha deck by Angela Hartfield. And I just dropped the first card, so I'm going to pick that up. And so it begins. We've got an overall energy of beginnings. Well, there you go. And I love this. Do you see this is Lord Ganesha? That's Lord Ganesha. There we go. And on the one hand, I think they're called mudras, right? But the hand gestures, they have specific meaning. On the right here, he has the hand held up, which is fearlessness. And the left hand is open and low, which is receptive. So this is a new beginning and being fearless in receiving what is coming. So what Spirit wants to talk to you about today is this process of awakening, and how when we are in awakening, we're continually renewing ourselves. We're becoming new, evolving, growing, and becoming, and we are renewing the version of ourselves that shows up in the world. That's one way to put it. We are renewing our connection to self and awareness of self, but we're also renewing how we're going about things. So it would be something like, imagine if you sat in meditation, and every time you sit in meditation, you come out of it a little more awake. Well, in that sense, you are in your house, you are living with people, you go, you sit in meditation, then you come out of a meditation a little more awake. Then every single interaction you have with every single person that lives in that house is going to be a new beginning. It's going to be renewed, and it's going to be renewed specifically in a way where you're meeting it from a higher perspective, right? Because sometimes we can have really difficult situations and circumstances in life that cause us to devolve, to fall into patterns, to fall into wounding, diseases, and which shift and change how we behave, for example, how we show up in the world, right? And so in that sense, it would also be a new experience, but just from a space where it's more harmful, it's more destructive, because it comes from a much more wounded space and place. This is talking about coming out from a more awakened space, a more healed space, a more whole space, and then engaging all over again. And that in that engagement all over again, there is newness, and therefore there are new beginnings. Beautiful. Lord Ganesha always delivers. Always. Yes. Lord Ganesha, bringer of truth, destroyer of obstacles by bringing truth. So 2 or 3? 2. Okay, let's do 2. We've got spiritual quests. Beautiful. And then we've got priorities. Okay, nice. And spiritual quest, when I saw this, I had this energy of the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is archetypal kind of journey and concept within, I think it's psychology at its core. But it's about how when you look at a lot of fairy tales, you will find the same archetypal journey in a lot of them across cultures, across time, which has different stages. So there's leaving home to go out into the big world, and then there are different experiences, and then there's the return and all of those elements. And so Spirit is talking about a spiritual quest that would be unfolding in the same way, except that it's like you have the whole hero's journey within one moment, within one cycle, within one experience, just as we were talking about being renewed. It would be like you're on a spiritual quest, but you're not on a spiritual quest or, a hero's quest, a seeker's quest. You're on a spiritual quest, but the nature of the spiritual quest is not about finishing some big arc or moving through some big arc. It's much more in the small moments, in the here and now. And really, Spirit is saying in your everyday life, It's about how you show up in your everyday life, in your simple moments, quiet moments, in your loud moments, in the moments when someone's driving you crazy, in the moments where you are feeling small and maybe you're in doubt, or in those moments where you're big and you know exactly how to go about things, how to do this and what to be and how, when, where, how, when you have all of those energies. But the core or the essence of the spiritual quest is to be in all of those moments and all of those experiences, and to show up from that awakened energy. And that's the priority. So I say this very often in readings. I'm sure you've heard me say it if you've been on the channel, and you will if you stick around, is that you can do an action, you can perform an action, but it's about the space that you perform it from. You and the most crazed killer on the planet breathe. We all breathe. We all eat, right, to sustain ourselves. I know there are breatharians, but in general, most people eat to sustain themselves. But what we eat, how we eat, when we eat, who we eat with, in what conditions, that changes radically. And so Spirit is saying that the core of the awakening process, in a way in which you're going to find a much smoother journey forward, way forward, is to get very clear on the priority of the consciousness that you bring into every situation or circumstance. That we're very quick and very used to thinking about spiritual growth and evolution, especially in these times and how it's been articulated. But we tend to think about it in terms of the experience, right? So for example, I'm being drawn back to the pandemic, where you would have people who would go on, be interviewed in CNN, and they're like, I can't catch the virus because my vibration is too high. What vibration has to do with that? Who knows? Sometimes they would use the word frequency, because it often happens that they are used interchangeably. My frequency is too high, I can't be sick. What frequency has to do with that? Who knows? But they are very, very convinced, right? And then they put that forward, and that is how they justify an action of, I don't know, not wearing a mask, not getting vaccinated, whatever it is. But at the same way, you could have someone who is choosing not to be vaccinated or not to wear a mask, and then justify it from a space where they are talking about civil liberties, and they're talking about government overreach or whatever. It's the same action from a very different level of consciousness. But similarly, when I was watching these women on who were talking about how they can't catch the virus because their vibration is so high, but they were saying it from a space of ignorance, I actually watched this couple who was on a cruise boat in the beginning of the pandemic. And while they were on that cruise, they caught the virus, and hardly anybody knew anything about it. So they became these kind of sensations, and a lot of attention went to them. They were an old elderly couple. They were sitting in their bed, and they were talking about how it is to have it, and their symptoms and their experience. And it was so fascinating to watch, because they were such beings of light. They had so much light and so much kindness and so much love to them and so much wisdom, and just very grounded, and it was so interesting to watch. And I was thinking around that time, and that's also how Spirit spoke to me about it, that it's not about catching it, not catching it. The exterior manifestation of whether you catch it or not is not a sign of how wise or developed you are. It's about the consciousness that you have. And these people were exhibiting a consciousness of walking through something that was terrifying half the planet, but they were walking through it with wisdom, with connection and togetherness, and really taking care of one another, and thinking about their kids who were somewhere else, and talking about the things that matter. What they talked about were the things that make life valuable and matter. They were talking with respect and with, again, kindness, and then love and compassion, and thinking about how it was affecting one another and their family, as opposed to thinking about, you know, all of this other stuff. And that had light, and that had meaning, and that was the consciousness. And again, catch it, don't catch it, right? You can sit and say, I'm too high in a vibration, I'm too great to ever have anything bad happen in my life. And if something bad happened in my life, it's because my vibration dropped, or it's because this person has negative vibes, or it's because people are cursing me, or whatever. But that's not the sign that you actually have a high level of consciousness. Just as you can be in very difficult life situations and life circumstances, and those situations and life circumstances don't say anything about your level of consciousness. And that's the priority, to look through all of that and look to the center of consciousness. I was watching a video once with a spiritual teacher, and a woman stood up from the audience and she asked a question, and she was from Syria, and her question was, how do I uphold my light in the middle of a civil war? Which just that question is mind-boggling, right? But when I saw this lady, I saw like I had a vision, like the sky opening and just legions of angels going where she walks, and that she also sends them with prayer and love and just being such a beautiful, and I would say in that sense, holy person. And she lives in Syria in the middle of civil war and trying to know how to uphold the light, right? So should she look at her external situations and say my vibration is not high? I'll give you one last example. I was in a train, and I was coming home from town, and it was rush hour, and a homeless man came on the train, and here they sell these pamphlets in order to exchange and to get money, so that they have a newspaper and they print it, and then they sell it instead of just outright begging. And he came in, and when he came in on the train, there was this feeling of complete stress. The stress level went up, but people were also angry. He just asked, does anyone have some coins? And they were like angry because now there's all the stress and strain and cost of crisis living, and everyone was angry at him for kind of making them say no, or just, whatever the logic there is. But it was that feeling of very clear hostility, and I felt my heart just kick in and say, speak through me. I heard myself speak. Yes, I'll have one, right? I'll have a newspaper. And he came to me, and we had an exchange, and his eyes were so bright. His soul was there. His heart was there. And we saw each other, we recognized, we smiled. It was the realest interaction that I had in the city the whole time that I had been there. And he's a homeless man, right? So it has nothing to do with on the inside, and what he's embodying and what he's carrying has nothing to do with the grandeur of him and who is on the inside, or his ability to actually let that shine in his eyes, in his smile, in his interactions, in the respect that he also showed all of these people who just showed him so much hostility and even, contempt. Yeah. For sure, contempt. And it's not, it's not on the same level at all. Let's keep going. Lord Ganesha, wow, you're bringing it today. We have got to embrace, yeah, and childlike expression. Okay. Here's the message in a nutshell that Spirit has for you here and now. We have here embrace and embracing the rat. There is a part of you that is small, that is everything that we kind of put on a rat. And you can do this. This is an exercise in psychology. It's like, think of a rat. What would you think a rat is, right? It's small, it's creepy, it's dirty, it's omnivore. That's mine. But like everything you would put on a rat, and kind of everything that it's not that you don't like it about yourself, but it bothers you, and it keeps you from kind of being in your center and being in that space. It pulls you out of that loving space and that loving experience, right? And it's about how you need to embrace that, or that's the advice, actually. Spirit is saying that the way into greater wholeness, into greater awakening, into greater cohesion within yourself is not to try to control those things or shape those things or mold those things to be something else. The spiritual quest is actually arriving at a place where you're embracing it and you're embracing the ego. And actually, I have experienced that a couple of times, which is just these beautiful moments. I think Muji, yeah, he calls them divine laughter, where I would just see my ego, I would see myself, right? I would experience myself doing something and seeing just how profoundly it comes from an egoic space. And it would crack me up, and I would laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and be unable to stop laughing. If you're interested, I think there's a video called Divine Laughter, and I think it's with Muji. I'm not sure how to spell his name, but it would be there. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. And that's kind of the spiritual quest. The Spirit is saying and talking about that in our age, and the way of arriving at this new beginning is very much in this instance. And the context of our whole conversation is that it is very much about coming out of this notion of killing the ego. I just saw something the other day, killing the ego. And I was like, isn't that a personality disorder just waiting to happen. Like that didn't sound to me like something to want, but there's a lot of that going around, and there's a lot of trying to dominate oneself instead of controlling oneself, trying to shape and mold ourselves. It's also spiritual ego, it's called, but trying to shape and mold ourselves into a version of ourselves that we think is spiritual, that we think is holy, that we think is beautiful, that we can accept. But that version of ourselves that we can accept is not the same as, well, this new beginning, but I actually meant to say it's not the same as embracing ourselves. It's not the same as loving who we are. And you know, I remember I wrote about this a long time ago, where I was seeing the ego very much as, or spiritual me rather, the ego as this part of us that is like a teenager, right? And if you have a teenager, that teenager is continually trying to find the limits, and they're testing your authority, they're testing your love, they're testing your patience, but because they are creating a new understanding of themselves and who they are, right? So they're testing those boundaries to get data. And the ego does the same, because the ego has a way of thinking, you know, far beyond what I'm going to be able to share here. But the ego has a way of thinking and seeing the world that is intended to be very much for us and how we interact with our reality. So in essence, the ego is testing the boundaries of our reality. What works, what doesn't work. And again, coming sometimes to control and all things, but testing those boundaries. And when we come into a space where we're bringing in the spiritual perspective and the spiritual love and saying, this is going to be the priority and this is what's going to matter. Love is the utmost priority in my life, and that's who I'm going to be, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's how I'm going to lead my life. The ego immediately starts testing those boundaries. Really, how much do you love me? Let me do this. Let me do this one thing you said you never were going to do. Let me do this thing that you think is heinous to do. Let me do, and it just goes off in all kinds of directions. And you do all of these things because you're testing the boundaries of your love. It would be something like, you know, maybe an atheist and then going, oh, really? Divine love? Okay, let's see if you'll still have divine love for me tomorrow, right? But fundamentally, the answer is to embrace. The answer is to meet it with love. And that's the awakening. And that's the new beginning that you can attain to if you are in a practice, if you make it a practice, and if you go about your life. If you move forward from this moment on, right? And I feel like it's more than this moment. This has been in the ethers. This has been around you for a while. And either way, you've been preparing for this. You've been working for this. It is the process of awakening. And look at the background of this card. Exactly. This is exactly what I mean. And in this deck, it's called inner knowing. So you have an inner knowing of how to do this. And you have an inner knowing that this is the path that you're on. It's just a message that it's time now. It's time to be meeting yourself in this much more loving way. And not just you. It's the rat in everyone. The rat in things. The rat in the world. I spend my day kind of understanding that, meeting the darkness and the smallness and the selfishness and the pettiness and all of those things, right? All of those variations of the fear and the hurt and the wounding within people and how that expresses, and in the world and in situations and circumstances in your life, to be meeting all of that within and without from a place where you're embracing it. And Spirit is saying, if you can embrace it, you set it aside and you free yourself to go back into a childlike expression. Then A can be doing whatever. I don't have to get angry. B can be doing whatever. I don't have to be angry, or rather, I don't have to be burdened by it. I can stay in my divine child space and essence and being. I can be as silly as I want. I was going to say stupid, but yeah, I can do that. Another pattern, calling myself stupid. I can call myself stupid and still embrace myself and calling myself stupid, just so I can remain in the grandeur, the majesty of the part of me that would love me through it. That part is always going to be my spirit. It's always going to be my true being. And the Spirit is saying it's even a way of calling it forward. You can think of it like all of your flaws and all of your mistakes and everything that's wrong in your life. Everything you're experiencing as hurtful, as painful, as difficult, as wrong outside of you, all of those as invitations to embrace it, just so you can set it aside and be you. You don't have to carry it. You don't have to be in it. But you just have to embrace it to then be able to move through it, right? The only way out is through. The only way out is through the embrace. So love, that was the message. Those were the messages for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this video served you. I'd love to hear what you thought of it, what you heard. And if you feel like it, then drop me a line. Thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate them. Oh my God. They really, sometimes they come at the right time, and one of them really made my day today. So thank you so much. And sending you lots of love, wishing you all the best. If you would like to work with me, I do offer intuitive readings. I have created some awesome healing work where there are energy clearings and there's healing, self-healings that you can speak the words and activate spirit and to activate people, places, and things in your life to go create some really powerful healing. It's all in the description box. If it speaks to you, sending you lots of love, wishing you all the best, all of it, and I will be seeing you around. Bye, love.